Here's the brutal truth. I've lost a lot more projects that I have won. And that's not easy to say. It hurts the ego and does not any favors to my brand. But I want to talk about this topic because I think it's a very, very important thing to understand, like fully understand, and welcome into the journey if you are ever going to start your own interior design business. Today, I'd like to take you behind the scenes and explain 3 different types of projects, different types of inquiries that I have lost so far this year. We are in almost June right now, so kind of halfway through the year. And I'm also going to share how these events have shaped me, the way I work, the way I pitch my services and my designs, and also the type of a studio that I'm building. Sounds good? Let's go. So this client was actually a property developer who had their own construction company. I actually got this opportunity from LinkedIn, from cold outreach, so that's why I always say do not rule them out completely. Although I guess in this scenario it doesn't really have a happy ending anyway. But you know, opportunity is an opportunity. So they've been working on gaining planning permission for this Aparthotel project. It was about 6 or 7, maybe 8 Aparthotel style rooms. So if you don't know what it is, it's basically like a self-contained little studio apartment style hotel room. These buildings usually are not manned or serviced the same way as the hotel would be, so more like an Airbnb feel. So we did the initial call about the project, had a good chat, had a good chemistry, so everything was going well. We agreed to look into this further, and after the call I sat down and created my design fee proposal. They wanted to keep the costs down, so because they had their own construction team and they had that skill in-house, I was not going to take on the detailed design. For me it was more about the concept, about developing the vision for the whole brand, as this was going to be the first of possibly multiple sites that they're going to be working on. So I presented my fees, we talked it through, they had some time to think about it and seemed to be okay with it, which was great. For me, that's like most of the battle win, right? Well, no, not quite. So what happened next was about 2 or 3 months of a bit of a back and forth because there were a few hold-ups on client end. First, there were some purchase issues. There was something about the financing, something about getting the sale through properly. Then there was Christmas and New Year's, which just slows everything down in general. And then eventually, about 2 or 3 months later from the initial discussion, I learned on a call that they have actually decided to completely drop this development because of a new law that meant that the whole business idea that they were developing was not going to be financially viable for them as a business. Like, it did not make sense. The maths were not mathing because of all the taxes and all sorts of other things that came into play, and the whole idea just evaporated. This was such a frustrating loss because I had gone to a place where the fees were agreed, and usually that for me is the hardest part, the hardest challenge, and I had overcome that challenge, so it was like, right, it's in the bag. But this time the project got called off because of other things that I just could not influence. The market is ruthless at the moment for new businesses and for someone who wants to start something from scratch. So if the math is not mathing, if the numbers are not stacking up, then business is not going ahead. So the lesson from all of this is that you just never know if a project will really happen until the payment is in your bank account and you are working on it. And even then, sometimes projects get called off in the middle of the whole design process and everything just goes into the bin. So now I'm trying to be a little bit more realistic, a bit more skeptical about all of the new inquiries and opportunities and just projects in general. I'm trying to kind of stay neutral, not too excited and not too skeptical. This lead came from a connection that I had made through networking events. Again, You never know what's going to come out of this. Originally, we linked up to do an event together, but nothing ever came of it, which was fine. But this time, when she reached out, she actually wanted to discuss the design of their own offices. So the brief was to redesign their current office space and make it a bit more flexible, as they had adapted the hybrid working and there were people kind of coming in and throughout the week, which meant that a lot of time the building was empty. So the concept was to fill up the space and make it a bit more attractive to the local businesses. They were gonna introduce a bit of a co-working, hot desking element into the space. There were some meeting rooms, there was a conference room to look at. So overall, quite a good opportunity and very interesting project to work on. At this point, there was no budget. It was kind of like, let's explore, blue sky thinking type of thing. So that ticked that box as well. So I did what I usually do after the briefing session, sat down, put my fees together, put the proposal together, and sent it off. What followed next is a series of back and forths of chasing calls, emails, kind of getting some responses that yes, the CEO hasn't kind of given any indication just yet, and I was kind of left hanging in the air for weeks. And I absolutely hate when this happens. I rather have someone tell me straight up that it's too expensive or it's not viable for them, rather than leave me hanging and leave me chasing and just making me feel like a fool. A couple of months later, after I've kind of given up on the chase and kind of written off the opportunity, I actually revisited their design fees, as I was working on another design fee proposal for an office project. And it was kind of pared back. It was a lot more concise, a lot more conceptual. So I thought, okay, I can actually take this approach and maybe transfer it to this project, this inquiry that's kind of gone wherever it has gone, and yeah, just revisit it and see what they think. Maybe that's something that they are looking for, but I've still not heard back from them, so I guess it's just a lost case. To be honest with you, I'm still a bit lost about this inquiry. It's almost like if there's no closure, then I can't really move on. You know, it's like in a relationship, you have to have a good talk or a big fight to kind of just move on, and we have not had that yet. But when I look at this whole situation, why I lost the project, maybe what went wrong, what lessons can I learn from this, it probably goes back to the fact that everything was quite a bit up in the air. Like, no one was fully committed from the beginning. The contact that reached out to me, she was obviously just doing her work, reaching out and just making sure that I've got the information for the project. But the CEO, none of the directors were actually present. So there was no like actual want or need for it. It was more like just a, you know, a little inquiry. And when we were doing any calls or presentations, everything was more like either a voice note or a quick call on the phone. Again, there's no proper commitment to sit down, put some time aside to discuss this properly. So when you look at it like this, actually there's a lot of red flags that would have told me from the beginning that this inquiry might not go ahead at all. It is crazy how noticing these little nuances right from the beginning can actually tell you so much about the potential of the lead as well. Obviously, it's not always going to happen the same way, but it can give you a good indication. This one is quite recent, like literally a couple of weeks old, maybe 3 weeks old now. And it's really taught me the importance of talking about numbers, about fees from the very beginning. Okay, so the client was a bit of a serial entrepreneur. He started with trades. I think he was a lecky himself, and then slowly grew his portfolio and his businesses around him. So this next business and project that he was already working on, like boots on the ground working, was this gym and wellness center. And the concept of this wellness center was really rooted in the well-being, the spirituality, and what it all means for the actual human body. So not quite like your average gym and your big chain gyms, something a little bit different. Our discovery call was quite unique, to say the least. At one point, I even felt like I was going to be recruited to join some sort of a pyramid scheme or some kind of a clan. I don't know. It just got a little bit weird, but then we ended the call with him saying, well, see what you can do, see what the price comes to, and we'll take it from there. So because this was more like an exploration of how we could work together, I created 2 fee proposals. One was, again, a lot more conceptual, kind of more basic, not as involved, and the other one was full involvement, all the drawing packs and all the details that they would need. The good thing about this project and this lead was that the chase was not as long, so that was refreshing to see. I think I heard back from the client with the feedback about a week later, and unfortunately the feedback was that the budget is not going to stretch. And when you are faced with this and you've already given them 2 options, there's not much further or not much lower that you can go, so you just kind of have to kiss it goodbye and learn from it and move on. So the big kicker, the big lesson that I got from this project was that you have to be prepared to throw some numbers in the conversation, in the initial discussions, and just kind of test it out and see what the initial response is. I know it feels scary and it's very uncomfortable, and it still is for me as well, but I think what you gain from being kind of this direct and open is definitely worth the discomfort. You can basically straight away avoid doing hours of work prepping the proposals, thinking about how you could approach this, how could you help this, and let's be honest, it's all unpaid work that you're kind of gambling with. At this point in my career, I have had enough of experience to sort of gauge roughly how much a certain size project or a certain type of inquiry would take for me. And because I understand my fee structure, I can quickly understand what the end number could look like. So I can speak to the client openly and say, okay, well, something like this would be under £2,000. Something like this would be between £5,000 to £10,000. And then something like this, or for your size of project, if it's, let's say, a lot bigger project than usual, it would be 10, 15, 20,000, depending on the involvement and depending on the time that we spend on the project. I also know my daily rates. I have a workshop type of offer that lasts only for a day, and then I do a bit of follow-up. I have a number for that. I also know what my monthly retainer would be in case someone wanted to work month by month or look at our collaboration kind of in a long term. So I know my numbers. I just need to be a lot more upfront and don't be scared of that conversation. And I hope that by me saying this is giving you the permission and the energy and the confidence to speak about numbers in your discovery sessions as well. I know that you're probably thinking, if I tell them the numbers, they might think that they are too high, so I'm gonna lose this inquiry without even having a chance to, do some work or even the chance to win them over. But let's be honest, if they are scared of talking about numbers, they probably don't really value your services and they can't really afford you anyway. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, it hasn't affected me at all. It has. It has affected me massively, especially the last couple of years have been a crazy roller coaster. I am physically knackered. I am emotionally absolutely drained. All of my cups are dry as bone. We need to fill them up ASAP. At the end of the day, I'm still just one person doing most of the work. So every no has got so much more weight on it, and the way that it could impact my business and impact my life essentially. But what I have learned is that if you really, really want your business to succeed, and especially a startup business to succeed, then you just gotta stay in the game and you gotta be so resilient and take it day by day, week by week, and just work towards that goal, whatever the goal for you is, and make your business a success. No one else is going to do it for you. I've talked about this briefly in some of my Friday roundup videos, but the current market in the UK and just in the world in general is quite brutal. The last few years politically and economically have been a whirlwind for everyone, so people are a lot more cautious where they are putting their money, how they are spending their money, and this goes straight onto new developments in the commercial field. There is the need, there is the want, I can tell that by getting these inquiries, but oftentimes the funding is not there. I'm saying this because I think oftentimes it is easy to kind of fall in the trap like, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? Am I not doing enough? Like, I've had those discussions in my head with myself and with my husband, bless him as well for the support. So it's so important to understand that it's not just your own effort, it's also what is going around you outside of your own headspace, outside of your own business. All of those things come together and affect how successful all inquiries will be. The reason why the Aparthotel job didn't go ahead was because there was a new law brought into the equation which just completely destroyed the whole business plan. The reason why the office project didn't go ahead was because the client was not fully interested in the inquiry in the first place. And the reason why I didn't get the wellness center project was because the client did not have the right budget to even hire an interior designer. Neither of those reasons say that I am a bad business owner and a bad designer. These are just brutal facts of the market that it is today. The best thing that you can do is learn from every setback, analyze it, and put something in place in your business, in your processes, so that this does not happen ever, or you minimize the possibility this happening ever again. So whether it is more honest discussions up front about the numbers, about the investment, or maybe you need to dial in and kind of just, you know, structure your process better. Whatever it is, however big or small that little change is going to be a little stepping stone or a big stepping stone towards a booked calendar and a successful business. Hopefully. Gotta be in it to win it. Thanks for listening to me once again, sharing the real side of running an interior design business. If any of this has resonated, please leave a like, comment below your thoughts, or maybe how you have learned to process rejection and deal with losing project leads. Let's normalize the fact that building something from scratch is not a linear thing. It's always up and down and going around in circles, sometimes even facing the lows and then coming back up again. Here's a few more videos and a playlist similar to the topics that we spoke about today. If I don't see you there, then I'll see you in the next one. Bye.